Welcome to everybody in the gallery this evening, and for those watching via live streaming. My name is Linda McLean, the Mayor of Ararat, and I would like to start the meeting in terms of Section 1 with the traditional acknowledgement and prayer.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to help us as elected councillors of the Ararat Rural City Council guide our deliberations. Prosper what is your will for us, to your honour and glory and for the welfare and benefit of the people whom we serve in the Ararat Rural City. Councillors pledge. We will undertake the duties of the Office of Councillor in the best interest of the people of the municipal district of the Ararat Rural City Council and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us under the Local Government Act 1989 or any other act to the best of our skill and judgment.
Our first item is apologies.
No apologies from councillors, Madam Mayor. I also just draw the public's attention to the fact that permission is granted to record the council meetings. So you mentioned that we are live streaming tonight's meeting. I have had one request from the ABC to record proceedings tonight. If there's anyone else in the gallery who wishes to record, you can just let us know who you are.
Yes, Dean Lawson from the Weekly Advertiser.
Paul Byrne Street everywhere.
Our first item, confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting.
Last meeting was on the 20th of March. Those minutes have been circulated.
So moved.
Second, thank you, councillor. All those in favour? Carried. 1.5, competitive declaration of disclosure of interest. Admission of urgent business, 1.6.
I'd like to speak on urgent business.
What's the item?
The item is about your absence from the chair of this council for the last 7 weeks, which we have not received an adequate explanation of. That lack of explanation has led this council into being held in ridicule. We are once again the laughing stock of local government in Victoria, and accordingly I call for a motion of no confidence in the Mayor and ask her to resign both as the Mayor and Councillor.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Braithwaite.
If I get a second, that's
to agree to reorder as urgent business first, so the motion is accepted as urgent business and then the motion.
Does anyone want to
I'll second that request for urgent business to be tabled at the, to discussed at the appropriate part of this meeting.
all those in favour? Carried.
So that will be dealt with under section 9, under urgent business.
Item 2.1, request to address council.
And we have had one request from Roy Trimble to speak to the council about the Golden Crossing. Mr. Trimble here.
Mr. Trimble here.
There is a lectern there if you need to put some notes on.
After I can hopefully do it without illustrations. I do have pictures and documents relating to it, but it may be that to save time they can be looked at later on. If someone wants a demonstration of something, let me know. I'm here this evening to ascertain the level of interest amongst the councillors in the Dobie Avenue of Honour. Many people don't know that it's there, but most people that travel on the Western Highway travel through it every time, or the remnants of it. And it's about to be destroyed, and I don't have a problem with it. This is to do with the duplication project, and I don't have a problem with that because trees that are remaining are in very poor condition, and probably the best of them may last 10 years. However, it's not about the trees, it's about the lives of the men who are represented by the trees. And the situation at the moment is that Vic Roads are saying that they have no obligations with regard to the trees, with the Avenue of Honour, other than to remove it. Now, I've had advice from an officer of the council to say that it is Vic Roads' responsibility. They're saying that it's not. I've been in touch with the Veterans Branch of the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and they say to me that Vic Roads has to acknowledge, do something substantial to acknowledge the existence of the Avenue of Honour. It doesn't have to be done at that particular point, to be nearby. And the Premier's Department, the person I'm dealing with, her name is Kathy Nash, and she sent me examples of what's been done around Victoria when Vic Roads have wanted to remove trees. And so I'm here tonight to try and find out what the council's opinion is about what should happen out there. Because I'm finding in talking to people one-on-one, particularly descendants that I'm tracking down, that they want something done. However, I've been told by the team leader of the Western Highway Duplication Project that he's done a survey and he's found that there's no interest. And so somewhere I would like to resolve this issue, because I'm being told by some of the people that there is interest. one person whose family been in this area for generation after generation. He would like to see some sort of monument put up in place. And another person who's not connected with, who's a farmer out in the area, he has offered to provide stonework and make a stone monument, and he just volunteered to do it, and so there is, to me, a groundswell. So, without further ado, I'd like to know what the each councillor's opinion about it is. I don't think anyone should feel that they'll be condemned for saying one way or another, because to me it's a personal thing, and to me the people who are most important are the descendants of the people that are in there, who are commemorated in the Avenue of Honour, and if they wish that to happen, that it be commemorated or not commemorated, we should respect those wishes. But I find it interesting that a fortnight ago, Brendan Nelson announced that the Australian War Memorial was going to undertake a $50 million upgrade, and so he explained the importance of doing that, and it was to commemorate the service of these people from the First World, from various wars in Canberra. For Dobie, it's in the First World War. So could if it's not appropriate, you don't have to put up your hands, but I'd just like to know what each of the councillors think, and I'll just add it to each side of the balance sheet and take it from there. But I know that it's not the council's responsibility, but these men who served and some didn't return, they were residents. They went to dances, they went to church, they went to the school, and they played football or whatever it was. They were part of the fabric of this area, and particularly of Dobie. So.
Thank you for your discursive discussion, and I just want to get a sort of feeling from councillors about that. I think it's pretty clear that we could support that and negotiate with Vic Roads. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for us to be reverent, I guess, to the past.
Yeah, there's a wonderful story about the official opening of the Avenue of Honour, and I recommend that everybody read it. And there was also, on the same day, the school had, following the Avenue of Honour's dedication, the school children had a dedication for the students that went, for the soldiers that had gone to the school, and they've got a little plantation on the site out there, and so it mattered to the community, and so I just sort of think, does it still matter to the community today? So, all right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate listening.
Madam Mayor, could I actually move that we have a report on this item at the next council meeting, please?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I would certainly second that request.
I think that it sounds like a very interesting situation, and I think we should be a lot more knowledgeable about the subject.
Mr. Trimble asked for a rough opinion, and I'd support an appropriate memorial, yes.
I'm not wanting to put people on the spot, and I'm happy to get feedback, some reasonable amount of time. I'm actually having negotiations with, and these are just a feasibility study. It's not, to me, it's not my decision about what happens out there, where I can get locals to be involved. That's what I wanted to do. It's their story, and you might have seen, there's been a couple of articles in the paper over the last month or so concerning my research into Dobie, Public Hall last week. The the heavy-duty set paved crossing for out there, which the Ford is only just one of a number of crossings of the river out of there. Out of Dobie is the history of river crossings in Victoria. You know, if you want to see something really special, have a look at this set stone, set paved crossing before it's damaged beyond recognition, because there's not too many of these around Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor.
And compare that, say, with the cobblestone one in the dip at Buanga. Anyway, thank you very much once again. Well, is there any other questions? Any questions that you want to ask?
I think you've,
Can we restrict it the Avenue of Honour though?
I think you've convinced us all about the Avenue of Honour, and I'm just asking advice from the CEO as to whether we need a formal motion, or we just act on that in providing a report. Yeah. Okay, well I'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next item, I just wanted to remind people of the rules for this meeting, and that is that all comments and remarks to be addressed to the Chair. I would respectfully ask for that to occur. And if councillors and staff and others could stand when they're addressing the Chair. I think there's a lot of emotion in the community, there's a lot of allegation, a lot of noise. And I think Ararat has had a history of meetings that have gone a bit astray, and I would prefer, and of course, I've had some learnings in that regard myself, but I would prefer that at least we look at some civilised behaviour this evening. So thank you. Deputations and presentations. Do we have any deputations?
We have none of them.
Thank you. Petitions.
We have no petitions.
Our next section is reports requiring council decision. First item is the local government funding vehicle 2018.
Madam Mayor, this is a report concerning the local government funding vehicle, which is a means of raising finance, an alternative to retail bank loans, and the local government sector a number of years ago embarked on a process to do its own bond issuance, and at the time the council committed to use that to fund some of the major capital works. And currently the budget there is an amount of $1 million earmarked to be raised to fund part of the Performing Arts Centre project. So we're at that point where we're recommending that the council participate in the current raising to look at taking up $1 million, and that the recommendation indicates that we proceed on that basis and do what's necessary to finalise it.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Are there any comments, any queries of the CEO? I'll ask for someone to move that recommendation. Councillor Pittman, seconded by Councillor Ford. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. .2 road name.
This report concerns the renaming of a section of Hillside Road, and I might invite Mr. Day to
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Thank you. Hillside Road comes off the Western Highway in two locations, and in order to preclude confusion for particularly emergency services, the renaming is proposed so that there is not two intersections of Hillside Road and the Western Highway. And so it's simply to separate one end of Hillside Road from the other for ease of finding access for emergency services.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Day? I'll put the motion then.
Sorry, I do have a question. The recommendation is to postpone this renaming.
until such time as the duplication is completed.
So do I take it that we're going to leave this confusion in there until the Western Highway duplication?
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, perhaps I can refer this to Don. It's a payment from his department. I'm sorry, my comments had not, I'd not reviewed the recommendation. What you're saying, the recommendation is simply there's no decision at this stage. There has been a proposal to rename the road for the reasons I've identified. The recommendation in the proposal is to defer that. I'm not sure whether Mr Cole has any further comment.
My apologies, but due to my recent absence, I'm not right across this report. I think it's suggested it's withdrawn.
Okay. Okay, we'll withdraw that motion. Thank you. 3.3, quarterly performance report.
Mr Cole indicated he's been on leave. Do you wish me to report? Thank you, Madam Mayor. The quarterly performance report sets out the Council's financial performance over the last quarter. I just draw your attention to the fact that most of the indicators are looking better than the budget forecasts, and so I'm comfortable that the reports there show that the Council's in a strong position against this current year's budget.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from councillors?
One I meant to actually phone in today was that halfway down page 15, it actually talks about these movements are to be expected because council raises rates and charges. Underneath that article, it actually says 15th of February. Is that meant to be 2017? There's a number missing.
Halfway down the page.
Oh, yes,
It says 201.
yes.
Pardon?
Yes,
It's meant to be 17, is it? Okay, thank you.
Any other queries?
I have to move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Braithwaite. Seconded. It's clear that this council is in a formidable financial position. On that note, all those in favour of that report? Passed. Carried. 3.4.
Item 3.4, Madam Mayor, deals with the proposed development of a policy to guide the council in the employment of a CEO and to the ongoing management of the CEO's performance and remuneration, and subsequent appointment of a committee to facilitate that process. This is something that's going to be recommended in the new Local Government Act. The councils do have a formal policy to guide the way in which the CEO is employed, remunerated, and their performance is managed. So what we've done here is look at what's likely to be provided for in the new Local Government Act, and set up a policy around that, and a committee that will assist the council in undertaking that task. This is a timely report because my appointment with the council will end in September. It's important for the council to start planning for the recruitment of a new CEO. So if this recommendation is adopted, the process would be that we have a policy in place to appoint a committee, and that committee will be charged with responsibility for the commencement of that recruitment process.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. This committee, we took the lead actually before the Local Government Act changes, and I've done some work with the Director of Corporate Services and the manager concerned, and this has led us to this position. Hopefully, given the history of this council with its its CEOs, that this engenders more engagement and involvement by every councillor, and we set a benchmark for the start of the establishment and continuation of an effective business relationship between the CEO who manages the operations of council and the more strategic arms of the council walls. So to that end, there's a recommendation in 4 parts that I seek someone to put. Councillor Braithwaite, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. All those in favour?
Can I actually ask a question? I mean, you spoke to the recommendation before recommendations put. They moved it, but no one's had the opportunity to speak. I have one little question, and that was the advisory committee, I assume, will be, the membership will be adjusted at the statutory meeting, as everything, and that will be just another committee put in there. That's right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also wanted to make a comment regarding some of the detail in terms of reference, specifically in section 5.4, the selection and role of independent person, point 5.44, which reads, a separate independent person may be required for the purpose of undertaking the CEO recruitment. This will be determined by the committee at the relevant time. I've had some discussion with the Director of Corporate Services just prior to this meeting, just to ascertain that the opportunity is there for this council, understanding that this is a terms of reference, for this council to ensure that there can be distinction between the independent agent responsible for the recruitment process of the CEO as distinct from a separate agency responsible for the assessment and the KPI process of the CEO, so that this council actually has that degree of control to ensure that there's no perceived conflict of interest should there be the appointment of the same agency for both of those processes. So, having asked that question, I just wanted to share with the remainder of council that that was a concern that I had, and I'm satisfied that the terms of reference, as they stand, give us the opportunity to ensure that there will not be a given that there may be a conflict of interest arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for informing the other councillors. Yeah. No other comments? Queries? All those in favour of that recommendation?
Before we move off that, Madam Mayor, 1.3 there required the appointment of Mayor and full council, so the Mayor's next officiated position. So it would be appropriate now to invite nominations for the 2 council representatives so that we can fill the positions on the committee and get that committee working.
Yes, so this can happen at this meeting and we get stuck into it as per your schedule over the next 3 months. Okay. Does anybody wish to...
No, I wish to nominate Councillor Braithwaite. I think his experience is appropriate.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
There may be one more.
Well, I'd nominate Councillor Bruce.
No,
Oh, no.
I'd decline that at the present moment. So, maybe Councillor Olswood or...
John, you want to be there? Would you like to be?
Yes.
I'll nominate Councillor
I'll
Lynch.
see that.
Thank you. So we have 2 nominations, 2 positions. There's no need for a vote. Thank you. Look forward to your service. Item 3.5, delegations from Council and Chief Executive Officer.
This report, Madam Mayor, is a periodic review of delegations issued to the CEO and subsequently the other staff. It's been reviewed and there's really no changes that have been made to it, so I've just recommended it be reinforced.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Beals.
I'll move the recommendation.
I'd like to stand in our question, please.
Madam Mayor, I've told this council before that I will not be standing. It is not in our standing orders and meeting procedures. There's rules we keep to.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Armstrong is first. All those in favour? Carried. Delegations from council members and council staff.
This report, Madam Mayor, deals with further delegations, and these delegations under certain legislation where the delegation must be direct from the council to specified staff. So once again, they've been reviewed and updated, and it's recommended that they be adopted.
Any questions? Would you like to move the recommendation? Councillor Peckman? Seconded Councillor Auckland. All those in favour? Carried. Appointment authorisations, Planning and Environment Act 1987, Section 118.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report deals with the appointment and authorisation of certain staff under the Planning and Environment Act. This is another occasion where staff should be authorised to do certain actions, carry out certain enforcements, must be authorised specifically by the council, and this report simply updates those authorisations.
Thank you. Questions? Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Braithwaite. Seconded Councillor Ford. All those in favour? Carried. Council Work Plan, Action Plan.
That report's tabled, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. As per the Minister's requirement here and our support to the Minister, we're reporting each month on the work plan, action plan which arose from the Commission of Inquiry. In asking for someone to move that recommendation, I would just like to double check what the voting was for the last month's meeting, because there seems to be some commentary about that.
The question is,
I have a recollection of that. Could I move it?
Sure.
Yeah, I can speak to it.
Yeah. Seconder? Second, Councillor Peckman.
I'd like Council to accept this report. I'd like to thank the efforts and professionalism of the CEO and his team. I believe that we've made good progress and that councillors are compliant with the Minister's recommendations. I think that's verbatim at last meeting.
What was the question you asked? Did you want to know what the voting was?
I was just interested in what the voting was last time. It's no answer.
I can't tell you what the voting was because you moved the motion at the time. Those in favour, you never asked for a vote against. So it was, I think, would have been 4-2. 5-2 for receiving the report.
Thanks, but I think it's best to go back to the source data, and it doesn't take away from the fact that Councillor Cornwall has moved the motion and has made some comments. Does anyone else wish to make any comments?
Madam Mayor, I can recall how the vote fell, and yes, as Councillor Beales has suggested, you from the chair called for votes for. There were no calls for votes against, and there was no request for a division to be recorded. So I'm confused as to the point of the question that you're asking of this council.
I think because people have said to me which way, were asking questions about which way the vote went for last month's work plan, I was interested in clarifying that. In explaining that clarification, we suggested that the proper vote was not taken. Is that what you're saying?
It is true, yes.
Yeah, so that vote was carried, yes. That's all we need to know. Thank you. So in terms of this vote for this month's work plan, is there any more discussion before I call for a vote? According to that recommendation, which was put by Councillor Ford and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Oh, sorry, all good.
No, let me.
Um,
Seconded by Councillor.
It's hiding in it.
I'll put the recommendation in. All those in favour of the recommendation? 3. All those against? Right, so 4 for division?
No, you need to vote.
Oh, sorry, well, I'll go for it. It's the nerves of such a wonderful audience that are getting to me a little bit, I must say, but I wish to support the work done by this council, and I'll be voting for the motion or the recommendation. .2 building approvals.
The report's tabled on building approvals issued over the past month.
Self-explanatory. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Braithwaite, seconder. Councillor Beckman. All those in favour? Carried. Planning matters approved under delegation, 4.3. There's a recommendation there, councillors, that the planning matters approved under delegation be received. Someone like to move that?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Allgood, seconded. Councillor Beckman. All those in favour? Carried. 5.1, another report, section 86 There's a recommendation there in 2 parts. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Beckman. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, yes.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, may I speak to the motion?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm pleased that this report now notes attendance at special committee meetings. For example, that section 86 committee meetings attendance by councillors is now charted on the record, and that satisfies the strategic objective 5.1 in the council plan, which is good governance through leadership. And I believe it's appropriate that councillor participation is accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. As one of the measures of a successful councillor, you're absolutely correct, Councillor Armstrong. Now, is there anything else or any other comments people wish to make? Councillor Orford?
Just one. I went to the Warwick Hall Committee and it wasn't on.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only one there, so
Good meeting.
my cousin wouldn't even come down and greet me. Can I just say that they've said that they will contact me when the meeting's on, so yeah, they haven't decided on their meeting cycles at the moment, so they'll let us know.
Thank you, Councillor Orford. Our manager, Jenny, works really hard
I know. And
to launch for the committees, let her know the times and the dates and the minutes.
the naughty, I know, a growl.
Councillor Braithwaite.
I'd just like to mention that I did attend the VAU Community Sports Committee and also the Hormonal Ball Reserve Committee, which they are not noted on here.
That would be Uanga and...
Uanga and Mo.
Thank you. All those in favour of that motion? Thank you. Passed, carried. Unanimous. Advisory committees.
could, and I'd like to move the recommendation, but I would like to add that I am not on the audit committee anymore. I think Councillor Braithwaite took that role, so if that could be changed in the minutes, I would appreciate that.
So you've moved that in essence. Is there a seconder? Councillor Armstrong, all those in favour? Carried. Assembly of Councillors, 6.1. There's a recommendation there that the Assembly of Council reports be received. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Ford, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Is there any discussion? Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, just querying the minutes for the 10th of April Assembly. I may well not recall correctly, but my recollection as it stands is that we did not receive an apology from yourself, the Mayor, for that Assembly. Would you please clarify?
10th of April.
I think it was the 10th of...
Sorry. Yes, I was apologising. It should be noted. I was.
It is noted in the minutes, yes. I just wanted to check that that was received. As I said, it may be my memory of the receival of apologies was incorrect, and I will stand corrected, but just wanted to clarify.
You're an apology as well, as I understand it. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't. I was present.
10th of April. No, I'm told an apology. Sorry, I thought that you're unwell, but anyway.
That was the 3rd of April.
Oh, okay, thanks. So someone moving the Assembly of Council reports we received was Councillor Ford. Yes, so all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Council reports. At each council meeting, all councillors will have the opportunity to provide an overview of any meeting attended. If a councillor chooses to provide details, the name of the conference, event and the councillor attending will be noted in the minutes of the meeting. If the council requires additional information on the conference or event to be included in the minutes, the council will submit in writing to the CEO by no later than 12 p.m. the next day following the meeting. So do any councillors wish to report an overview of their meeting attendance? Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, on the 27th of March I attended a frost recovery workshop out at Tavierne, which I had fellow councillors attend with me. Essentially that was attended by representatives from Agriculture Victoria, the Grains Research Development Corporation and the National Centre for Farmer Health and also the Rural Financial Counselling Service. And a great number of producers who were very keen to hear the expert opinion of Mick Faulkner from the GRDC. And he's very extensively on the frost process and potential strategies for mitigation and frost risk management. And I think it is timely to remind people within our municipality and neighbouring municipalities who were similarly affected by the frost of the fact that financial adrenaline will be waning at this point in time in the financial year. And I encourage grain and grape producers to look to the National Centre for Farmer Health and the Rural Financial Counselling Service and Centrelink for support. Agriculture Victoria had senior staff in attendance who noted the need for local frost research and the benefits that would result from a weather data network. The Pyrenees Shire Council was also in attendance and they're highly conscious of the severe impact of the frost on farming businesses, or I should say primary production, because we're talking about not just grain production but also grape production. And there are very strong indications that the cost to our community runs to the millions, which doesn't even take into account the flow-through effect on the supply and process chain. Following on from that, on the 9th of April, following the invitation from the Glenelg Hopkins CMA, I attended a small gathering at Cemetery Creek here in Ararat, where the works crew led by Percy O'Brien has completed woody weed control, namely broom and gorse, and that's been in partnership with the Ararat Land Care Group. John Mawson represented that group, and Aileen Banfield represented the Ararat Regional Biolands Network, and that's great evidence, I think, of the collaborative work done by council. So, following on from that, again in conjunction with other councillors, I attended the Rural Council's Victoria Forum, caught the train from Beaufort, which was just terrific. It was, I was lucky, I was not on a service that was affected by some of the hold-ups that other passengers encountered in the same week. I won't go into great length about the agenda for that day, other than just to emphasise the advocacy efforts on the part of RCB for all of our rural councils, and their budget submission to the Victorian State Government has outlined the key measures that they're requesting regarding the repair of ageing roads, smarter service delivery, a strong voice for rural Victorians, and financial sustainability for rural Victorians. Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I also attended the Frost event at Tadioon on the 27th, and there was some very good information related to the affected people down there. I attended Rural Council's Victoria last week, and there was a number of interesting things raised, particularly about growth rates in Victoria. It might be a surprise to some that Wyndham Council is growing faster than all of the 34 Victorian rural councils combined. And that 92% of all the growth in Victoria is in Melbourne, the peri-urban councils, and Geelong.
Scary.
And they highlighted a number of issues in relation to how we get more people to choose the country as a place to live, and the difficulties involved in that. It's not such a simple issue. It's a much more complex issue in terms of, particularly with refugees and stuff like that. I also attended the day after the briefing on the recycling problem. And this problem is very complex, and we still don't know exactly the ramifications of it. At the moment, we're dealing with about $130 changeover in price per tonne, but the plummeting in the value of quality paper for recycling because of the oversupply has caused them to say that that number might not be accurate. It could be a number north of that. And the MAV, who in effect have become the voice of regional councils, because we don't have a voice in this, because we're councils, not regional waste management authorities, and they are servants of the state. So the MAV have really stepped up to the plate on this and really become our voice. And they're looking at funding issues in relation to maybe balancing out that rise and fall in that price so that we can give some certainty to councils while they're making the budget.
Yes, thank you, Madam. On Friday the 23rd of March, I attended the Crowlands Wind Farm launch, and many of our Melbourne metropolitan many of our Melbourne colleagues were presented with this, and I was very proud, I must admit, of the fact that I think when this started off, Councillor Braithwaite was the CEO of Ararat, and I was the mayor, so I brought that home, and he's told me that it's his, but I'm not quite certain about that yet. But it was very interesting that the Melbourne Metropolitan Councils have actually bought the wind energy from the farm, and the acting Lord Mayor Aaron Wood was very proud to actually state that many of them had come up on the train and then got on the bus, or basically had bussed up from Melbourne as a group to look at the wind farm before it even started. It was really intriguing because I was a bit worried about why I'd been invited, and what had actually happened was, because of the Ararat City Council's involvement with Pacific Hydro over such a long time, they had actually invited me out there to be part of that, and I was very proud of that, and I was very impressed with the way that Melbourne are embracing the wind energy, and they bought most of the wind energy from out there, so that's a really good way that we've actually been able to connect with that, and it was great to be able to know that these people were looking around our little area. I went to the Laura Railway Station reopening with yourself, and also Councillor Beals was there. And there are great plans underway to have this iconic building open, often for art shows and generally for the public to have a look at. And I'd like to congratulate Vic Track on taking up these sidings and actually turning them into something that the community can use, because I think that's very important to our smaller communities. On Thursday the 29th of March, Challenbar held a fundraiser for the Royal Children's Hospital. A record for Ararat was raised, which was fantastic, through the Ararat Fire Brigade team, and I'd like to congratulate them on that. The Easter Market at Moyston once again was well attended, with lots of new attendees and lots of people milling around. Greenhill Lake had over 200 caravans over the Easter break, and local businesses were promoted through bags that the council provided for this particular event. I had a phone call, rather disturbing one, about a music festival being held out at Mount Cole. There was no permit for this actual festival, and of course that gave me reason to be a little bit alarmed, because I hadn't seen anything cross this table, and it basically came out of the blue. And of course, with the fire danger that we've got, a lot of the people that are involved there don't understand about the total fire bans, and there were fires going up in the forest. So it was a source of alarm, and in contacting some of our staff, there was no permit given, but apparently this happens quite frequently, which is a little bit disturbing for those people living out there in those particular...
Thank you, Councillor Allgood. We're trying to keep this to meetings attended, and I understand the important role you played in that, and your advice to the CEO and the staff. And I think I read an email from other councillors thanking you for, I think from Councillor Beals, for your alert. Continue on with other meetings, Councillor Allgood. I'm not going to chop you off, it's just a case of keeping to the meetings.
Thank you.
Do a report.
Yes, but I didn't know that Councillor Allgood had finished.
Could I just say that I also attended the Lake Hill Festival to see how they were going, and on Tuesday I also went to the Taddyune to listen to the farmers and the problem with the agricultural recovery, and that was really distressing to look around that room and actually see the worried look on all the farmers' faces. Great information handed out, and I just hope that everyone takes that advantage in taking up the ideas that have been promoted. Alexandra Hall, the new recruits for the Western Bulldogs program, knew absolutely nothing about. Great program. Really quite confusing about not knowing about this, but being really pleased about learning what was going on. And then, along with Councillor Petman, we attended the Ararat Pacing Cup, which had a great crowd, one of the best crowds they've had for a long time. April the 6th, I was at the launch of the RSL Chinese Anzac display. This was very impressive, and I'd encourage councillors to have a look at it, because it's a great way that the Chinese were involved. Sunday the April the 8th, Maury and I had the pleasure of attending the Ballarat reception to meet Prince Edward, the Prince of Essex, on his royal visit, who was in Australia for the Commonwealth Games, and to visit areas to talk to the youth engaged in the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. He was extremely interested in his father's awards and the recipients of the projects that were involved. On the 11th, I also, along with Councillors Armstrong and Braithwaite, attended the Mayor's, Councillors and CEOs Forum in Melbourne. Speakers were Charlotte Fulford and the Minister for Regional Victoria, and also Matthew Guy, the Minister of the Opposition, hearing both sides of the major parties of the next election. Subject covered rural population growth, future policy, as Councillor Braithwaite has talked about, and this is the actual document, which is quite an interesting read, as you can see by the tags in it. And on April 13th, the Central Highlands Mayors and CEOs Forum last Friday in Straw attended along with our CEO, Mr. Baldwin, and yeah, that was quite interesting too. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and I would just like to pass congratulations and my warmest regard for the Deputy Mayor's role in the time that I've been working elsewhere. It's much appreciated, and I think the community appreciates your contribution, and I think it's absolutely remarkable, so thank you. Councillor Kevin.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Easter Monday I represented Ararat Rural City Council at the Still Hit as a guest of the Northern Grampians Shire. The racing was very exciting. It was good to see such a big crowd in our Grampians region. I'd like to thank the Northern Grampians Shire for their hospitality and congratulate them on having a well-renowned event. And for anybody who's never visited the GIP, I recommend that they give that a go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council reports? I just want to make a couple of quick comments about my meetings. I've had meetings with the Australian Citizens Against Corruption. This is an organisation that seeks to support government, particularly local government and state government, in ensuring that accountability is appropriate for the expenditure of funds in government and on behalf of ratepayers and taxpayers. I've been involved in this organisation for a couple of years. In addition, another meeting I attended, I've always been a little bit left of centre. Some people might be a bit pejorative in that discussion, about the submission to state government which we made on the financing of rural councils. I think there's been some terrific work done by the upper house people for the state government on the viability, and the CEO of Ararat Rural Municipal Council commented on that last week in the newspapers. But I made a separate submission on the viability, and it was strongly influenced by the work, incredible work done by RCV, and from another meeting I attended in that regard. With Aurora, the Aurora Big Track function, if you like, was excellent, and I think that there's so much support from the Aurora community for this to have happened, and I encourage all people to get a chance to go to the what is like a small precinct at the railway station, and I'm picking up a vibe from the local people in Aurora that it might generate some more activity for the historical buildings from the local citizens in terms of upgrading those as well. I think it's the courthouse building or whatever next door. The final work that I've been involved with in the last couple of months is around workforce issues. And as you know, I think the lead in this municipality has been taken by the CEO of East Grampians Health Service, Mr Nick Bush, and people who are in this room who are acquainted or involved in board roles for East Grampians. And I'd like to commend Nick and his people for the workforce planning work they've done in conjunction with state government. So I think there's a move afoot for more financing of looking at workforce need. And as the Regional Australian Institute has indicated, this municipality is in an unusual position where we have labour shortages. So there are various organisations that need labour and can't fill the jobs. And I think that provides a complexity to workforce management for this district. Thank you, that's it for me. Notices of motion. Do we have any notices?
We have no notices of motion submitted, Madam Mayor.
Right. Section 9, urgent business.
There was a matter of urgent business accepted at the beginning of the meeting, Madam Mayor. On a motion moved by Councillor Braithwaite to discuss the Mayor's absence from Council and lack of adequate explanation.
In the last week I've been made aware through the community that you are now domiciled in Mount Isa and that you have accepted the position there, which is your right. It's very disappointing that this information should be related to some of the councillors by the media or by the local community. I believe that's brought us into another situation where we're held up in ridicule. In those actions, been contemptful, quite frankly. You've held the community in contempt. You failed to advise us of what your position was, and I would repeat my call for you to resign. I would call a motion of no confidence in you, and for you to resign from this council forthwith as a councillor and a mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Does anyone else wish to say?
The second, I presume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As seconder of the motion, yes, I would like to support the statement given by Councillor Braithwaite. I've had serious ongoing concerns for a considerable period of time, of which you, Madam Mayor, have been aware, yet you have not made an attempt to effect an improvement in either our relationship or the relationship across this whole council. I believe that any person who puts themselves forward as a candidate for public office must be prepared to face scrutiny. And from time to time, you have demonstrated an enthusiastic expression of intention to satisfy various goals of this council and the role of mayor and councillor. But I'm not convinced that we've actually seen evidence of capacity. So I think the struggle that we've witnessed from you in explaining your actions or inactions in open and transparent terms is deeply concerning. I believe that you've willfully brought this council into disrepute by not communicating with us as a whole council, but selectively communicating with a few councillors. You have previously interfered with the Community Engagement Advisory Committee process of this council, which is the fourth recommendation from the Minister in the Work Plan, which I've raised previously in this chamber. There's still been no satisfactory explanation given for your interference in that process, and the advisory committee is yet to have another meeting scheduled. So I think, you know, the ramifications are ongoing from the action you chose to take there. So essentially, accountability is the key, and I really strongly believe that I'm voicing concerns shared by many people across the community, and that is my role as councillor, to advocate for our community. I'm concerned for the hurt that has been brought to this community, the stress that people are feeling, the uncertainty about the direction of this council and its strategic goals, and we really are feeling that we are lacking leadership, have done for quite some period of time, and I sincerely don't believe that you're able to perform in the capacity of mayor and councillor, and it's very distressing. Thank you.
And before you go on, could we just get Councillor Braithwaite to clarify the motion, exact wording?
I'm calling on the mayor to resign as both councillor and mayor, and calling for a motion of no confidence. No current.
I was thinking under the circumstances it may be best if you vacate the chair and let someone else chair the meeting so you can respond to some of those issues.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that once appropriate for the deputy mayor for a second.
calling for a
Motion by Councillor Mann.
motion to no confidence in the first. Councillor Armstrong, you've actually seconded that. You've spoken to the motion. Is there any other speakers? All of them. Yes.
I'm speaking really more making comment, I suspect. Surely there must be something else going on here. I'd like to separate this motion into two parts.
We've actually done that.
So in my commentary, what we have is we've got a mayor who's had quite a difficult time in council, and I think a group of councillors has had quite a difficult time in council. I would suggest that she's in a transition period with her career. I would suggest that she probably wouldn't have known when a decision has been made in her career and what she's doing, so how to advise us of that. It just seems very blurry and very critical. I think this is a transition, and I would like people to respect that people do have experience and respond to changes. The other point is that this makes the changes and reform in council that we've been seeking difficult, but those reforms have made it very, very hard for us. I'm sort of speaking off the cuff here, so excuse me with that. From my experience of the rates, I think I identified at an early stage that we weren't necessarily taking money from farmers. We were giving them $2 million.
Talking about these two motions, not that.
But I'm speaking as to why we're having this pressure and why this emotion is being
We
made.
need to be a little closer aligned to the subject. Councillor Ford, if you could, please.
Okay. So there's been an overwhelming influence of a lobby group to weaken the effectiveness and public trust of the Ararat Rural City Council. That is obviously motivated by the rates discussion, and I think that the story that hasn't been told is something that we can elaborate further if it's not appropriate to do so now. The behaviours, the attitudes and behaviours of the big farm enterprises have existed for a long time and have been accepted as normal.
Yes. Councillor Ford, if you could come back to the subject. Noted, Councillor Armstrong. If you could come back to the subject, please.
Okay. Well, who stands to benefit from this motion? The scenarios hoped for by the big farm enterprises is to admonish councillors sufficiently so that we are no longer effective. And I think that most of this is just a point in time where there is a target, and I don't know how to defend that target, but this is an ongoing battle, and I think it needs further discussion as to why we're in this situation. An individual bearing this much pressure is significant and has not been addressed. Why would Mayor McLean be looking for work outside the district? She's been ostracised and admonished, just like I feel. And there's another story to this. Thank you.
Councillor Ford. Any further councillors before Councillor
This is a very sad day, actually.
Very distressing that.
Well, it's a sad day. In 2008, this council moved to notice no confidence in the CEO, and this is a sad occasion. I'm not going to go back over too much past history. At the December meeting of council, I informed the community that I read to the minister my concerns over the direction council was taking. The minister took 6 weeks to acknowledge my correspondence and stated, I note the matters raised by you in relation to the behaviour of council. However, the reports that I'm receiving from the monitor of the council provide no evidence that council is not making decisions it is required to make under the Act or has acted unlawfully in a serious respect. With the support of the monitor, the council also appears to make good progress to address the recommendations of the Commission inquiry. At no stage has Councillor McLean acknowledged in hindsight or otherwise any mistake Commissioner area in the role of Councillor as Mayor. However, in the advertisement of 22nd December 2000, under the quote, "It's time to reflect," she stated she had a strong sense of integrity and talks about strategic and operational direction and enough reforms. I guess I'm not one of them. In council to fix these wicked problems.
Councillor Beard,
No.
just speak up on those.
Well, it's hard when you're reading. Oh, I'll try and speak up. These wicked problems. Wicked problems, what are they? What's that? Then, of course, is the constant referral to the $1 million for the Commission of Inquiry and Monitor. Even today on the radio, she talks about using committed reserves of those free to use.
Councillor Beard.
Yeah, it's just in relation to the behaviour of the mayor, and that's why I'm reading it. Yeah, well, it's the behaviour. She's made comments about the budget reserves, and even today she said formidable financial position, and yet on the radio today she said we should be using the word reserve. I was always told, my old sergeant in the 1960s said to me, young girls never lie, you can bend the truth, you can always remember the truth, you cannot remember lies. So generally the mayor was granted leave over the Australia Day celebrations. I found it strange, but as it was school holidays, and just let that fly. Now, there are issues that I had with the mayor in relation to comments she signed to a letter to the governor, but I'll leave that at the present moment. But I believe the organisers, the CEO, I queried the comment that Councillor McLean made that she was a board member of Age World Victoria in Tasmania. The CEO of Age World lives in the Shire. I don't know him, I've never met him. I sent an email to Age World Victoria and they informed me, and I clearly stated who I was and who I was asking a question about, and they said Councillor McLean was not a board member but a committee member, Community Advisory Committee. This is the same as a member of the Rating Advisory Group of ours saying that they're a councillor. It's a matter of integrity is what we're talking about today. Now, in relation to that, we also have the issues of the car. People phoning about the car. Now, when I was asked about the car, I said the mayor, in my belief, has full private use of the car within the state of Victoria. But it wasn't written down in any of our documents. And the car disappeared. There's been no explanation. Then we know we have the issue of where the mayor lives. Council really has a council who doesn't live in the municipality, but complies with owning property and works in the city and has membership of the Lesbon Community Group. I believe that Council McLean stated she has a full-time job in Mount Eliza. The mayoral package, the mayoral package is around 80,000 and hundreds of families in Ararat monthly receive food services from the neighbour house alone. However, she needs more than the allowance to survive. Also, for the mayor in last week's advertisement, stated councils and volunteers, etc., is insensitive view of the struggles of some of our community members. For the mayor's package, the community deserves a full-time mayor, but it has to be said about this. The community feeling does not support Councillor McLean's view of the world. Her comments are best ill-informed, but are also insensitive. A resident from Elmhurst from ABC Radio today said the mayor's comments were delusional. And I have no comment to make about that, but that's the view that's been expressed in the proposal.
Any further comments, Councillor?
If I can close the
Councillor,
debate.
oh, sorry. Councillor McLean, do you want a chance to comment?
Yes, but I didn't know whether you finished.
Mr. CEO said that you have
How's the
got.
break vote?
I'll close the debate.
He will. So if you need to comment, you need to do it now.
This is an interesting meeting, and it's really wonderful to see my friends and my enemies here. I guess at the outset, since returning to Ararat community, I've been really keen to make a contribution.
Councillor McConnell, we should have already listened to council.
Sorry, and I made this mistake at the rating meeting. So, I think, yes, I was really keen to make a contribution when I first signed up as a in a by-election, and I continue to work really hard for this community, and in particular because I've come from farming stock. I was approached by a group of farmers in my first period about cutting the rates. So I managed to get an agreement from other councillors to do that, and this was because of the drought. So we passed that motion. I was a bit disappointed about other aspects of it, but I think that my heart was in the right place in terms of making a contribution. I'm disappointed with the comments made this evening. I think it'd be fair to say that the Commission of Inquiry has been difficult for all of us. But in this time and this period of me being mayor, I had other views which I thought were possible, and it was to support the people who don't have a voice in this community, support the people who are vulnerable. Now, many people would question whether that is the role of local government, and I think there's a lot of debate about local government, and in the last 2 years in particular, I think the community expectations of local government are really high, but also the disappointments and anger that those needs aren't being met. I think the Act, the changes to the Local Government Act are one thing in that they will bring about some reforms, but there's still a disconnect between what local government can provide financially and what the expectations of people are. So I think that's a struggle for everybody to deal with. And given some stuff which I think, you know, starts a mudslinging contest if I go into it, but I think it was a significant disappointment to have 4 votes as mayor last November, and yet in that meeting people say that they couldn't accept that and walked out of the meeting. I think it suggests to me a problem with an understanding of democracy, because the majority ruled that I would be mayor on that evening, and I graciously got up and said, "Oh, terrific." But a couple of people made some negative, vilifying comments, and both walked out, and then one resigned after having been mayor for many years. So that was pretty disappointing, a pretty hard start. When the new CEO, the interim CEO, arrived in Ararat, I'd expressed disappointment that the Commission of Inquiry had occurred. I felt that it was personality based and so on, but I accepted that the Minister of Local Government has a role and an obligation to serve the community, and because of concerns about process, etc., different changes were put into place. But I did say to Mr. Borden on his arrival that I'd been pretty wounded by the Commission of Inquiry. I'd been pretty wounded by my attempts to do the right thing in and around quite a lot of mistakes, I might say. So I'd be looking at other job opportunities. Now, as we all know, and some of you would guess because you're a baby boomer as well, I'm the wrong side of 60. And I'm closer to some other milestones. So it's been, since last year, an absolute joy to be invited as a senior consultant to be involved in medical work. And to that end, I've taken that with gusto, and in the negativity and victimisation and bullying that's occurred, unfortunately from people who should know better outside Ararat, this has given me a lot of joy. I've been supported by many members of the councillors, and when an opportunity presented itself, I grabbed it. Now, I was uncertain, exactly, Mayor, I was uncertain about my health and whether I would be able to sustain a lot of work interstate. And it's like going for a job interview. You don't tell all your friends and you don't tell your enemies about your job interview until you've got the job. So I have been absent, with apologies. I have been on the iPad most nights. I have had regular confidence and regular talks with various people in the community and in this council. But it's only fairly recently that that my work has started to really solidify in the medical field. So I'm honoured that I'm chosen for such a contribution to society, and I'm honoured to be coaching people who are clinicians and making contribution to the workforce. And on that note, you know, I've been really, really chuffed. I find it regrettable that a different set of rules apply to things like the mayoral car for this mayor than all the previous mayors here and in the rest of the state. I'm disappointed at various things which I could go on about. But I'm willing to take on board the criticisms and feedback that have been given by councillors. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I have no wish to pile any more hurt onto Glenda. But the position is untenable. You cannot perform the role of mayor or councillor from that item. This community deserves more than that. So I repeat my call that I have no confidence in you to continue as mayor, and that I'm calling on you to resign from both positions on council, mayor and councillor.
You should put the motion.
Could I just point of
clarification?
Could we ask the question rather than vote on it? Would that be appropriate?
Or would have to be guided by the officers.
The motion.
There is a motion before the chair.
And second.
Yes, and we've got a seconder. And now we need to vote on it, I'm told. Yes. All right. Would you like to vote, councillors? All those in favour of Councillor Baycott's motion? Those against? The motion is carried.
That's the motion of no confidence.
Yes, that's a vote of no confidence. And we have the second one, which is, you had a second motion?
Yes,
Councillor Braithwaite?
I'm calling on Councillor Glenda to resign from both councillor and mayor.
Councillor McLean, would you like to respond to that, or would you like to see the motion go through? We need a seconder. Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Braithwaite.
I moved it.
I know you did. Do you want to speak to it?
I think I've enunciated enough, and as I say, I don't want to cause any further pain. I think you should put the motion.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor McLean.
I would like I think I'd appreciate evidence that is for council consideration. My understanding of statutory requirements, etc., are such that I have certain rights as well as obligations. So I'd like some information on that. I've been considering my position for some time, and I take on board the consideration that my position is untenable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fine. No other speakers?
Can I just
Councillor Beale?
make a point that should be made for the galleries? The council has no power. Only Councillor McLean has the ability to cease being mayor and cease being councillor.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. You have some confidential items, councillors.
Excuse me, I have to to the chair. Just let the gallery know, we're now moving into the closed session, so this is the end of the public aspect of our meeting, and I'm closing this session to move on to confidential.